earlier today, I had a conversation with this guy from Destiny subreddit. I don't know who he was. I'm not even gonna bother mentioning the Reddit name. And we were talking about defund the police. Basically, what's going on is that there are centrist Democrats who are trying to blame the Democrat Party's lackluster performance down ballot on progressives, and more specifically, defund the police. And my argument is, first of all, that there isn't even any evidence that defund the police substantially affected anything when it comes to the down ballot races. Every single source that I have seen talking about this only talks about Democratic insiders talking about how defund the police hurt people down ballot. They don't talk about any type of statistics or any type of polling that was done on it. And to which one of the respondees that I am going to talk about on this subreddit, they mentioned that polling this year was extremely inaccurate, and especially exit polling because of mail-in ballots, this, that, and the other thing. So yeah, basically what he's saying is that we can't prove it one way or the other. You can only speculate, which is fair enough. I couldn't find any polling on it. I did find a website that said that defund the police was popular depending on how you phrased it, which is the case for most issues that are polled. But yeah, establishment Democrats are trying to blame progressives, specifically defund the police, on their lackluster performance. To which I say that we don't even have any proof that defund the police had a significant impact, to which most people would agree, because polling apparently wasn't very good this year. And exit polling isn't very reliable because of mail-in ballots. But also, I believe that attacking the rhetoric of defund the police, which is a fair thing to attack. If you're attacking specifically the rhetoric, then defund the police is stupid. The actual phrasing of defund the police is stupid. It doesn't portray what most people mean when they say defund the police. And for people who aren't following progressive or left-wing policy very strongly, they aren't going to know what you mean by defund the police. They're going to hear the phrase defund the police and think that you actually want to abolish the police. Defund the police and abolish the police are two different things to most people who follow politics. To people like AOC and Bernie Sanders, defund the police and abolish the police are two different things. That is why there is a whole slogan for people who want to actually abolish the police, and that is abolish the police. So yeah, I had this conversation with this guy. Said those two things. And I believe that the way that the Democrats are going about talking about the rhetoric of defund the police is alienating the left, which is not a good thing. You don't want to alienate the left because, well, you need the left to win. Anyone that doesn't believe that you need the left to win, I don't want to ever hear you complain about a Bernie or Buster, ever, period. You need and I also don't want to hear you blame Bernie or Bust for the loss of 2006. And I believe that the Democratic Party is just scapegoating progressives and trying to find an excuse for why they had such lackluster performances. And my argument for this is, nobody who lost, as far as I know, nobody who lost seats that they were supposed to win actually supported defund the police. The best the people who believe that defund the police cost Democrats their seats can come up with to try and tie the two together are that these people lost and Republicans ran attack ads saying they want to defund the police. That seems to be what I'm getting from the news sites that I'm seeing. So I pointed these things out. I posted a new thread in Destiny's subreddit saying that I was looking for people to talk about defund the police thing with. And I laid out my arguments in like broad strokes, what my arguments are. And I got this guy that said, it's impossible to find evidence you wouldn't consider anecdotal. Might be true. Exit polling, which is usually somewhere between terrible and okay, is far, far worse this year due to the amount of mail-in ballots and other irregularities. So there just isn't data out there other than the experience of those running and the attack ads used against them. The experience of those running and lost, what I am saying is that they aren't going to admit that they lost because of themselves. So they're going to try and scapegoat something like defund the police. And just because you're running an attack ad, like if you are not running on defund the police, and an attack ad is saying that you are running on the defund the police, and you fail to get the message out that you are not running on defund the police, then that is your fault. If the Republicans were able to get the message out that you are trying to defund the police, and I'm not meaning like defund the police in the way that progressives actually mean when they say defund the police, reallocating funds from one area to another, because that seems to be popular amongst most people. I mean, if you are not for defunding the police in the way that Republicans think that defund the police is, or at least the way they are trying to make them out to be, and you fail to get that message across to your voters, that is your fault. That is not the fault of the left, who has admittedly terrible rhetoric when it comes to this issue, but it is not the fault of the left that you are not able to get that message out. Let's think about something real quick. Let's think about the fact that defund the police didn't come from AOC. It didn't come from Bernie Sanders. It didn't come from the squad. It didn't come from anybody that's in power right now. Defund the police came from Black Lives Matter protesters. And Black Lives Matter protesters aren't thinking about political effectiveness of their rhetoric when they come up with these slogans to use while they are marching. People like AOC and Bernie Sanders attached themselves to this message of defund the police, but added the caveat of, we don't want to actually get rid of the police department. We want to reallocate funds from policing to things such as mental health services so that we don't have to call on the police every time there is something going wrong in somebody's life, making it less of a chance you would get shot by a police officer because you're not going to necessarily be depending on them to solve whatever issue you're going through right now. So yeah, if the Democrats failed to get the message out that they are not for defunding the police in the way that Republicans are making them out to be, that is their fault. People who support AOC know what she means when she says defund the police. Why can't these people in the swing states get that message across? Do I believe defund the police harm Democratic candidates? Almost certainly. Data analysts who know way more than me, like David Shore, believe that is the case. And I have no reason not to trust him. I don't know who David Shore is. I listened to a little bit of his podcast. I have no reason not to trust him, but I also don't have a reason to trust him. Especially in rhetoric. Like, you could be a really good, well, I guess, like take somebody like, what was his name? Nate Silver, who this community turned on during the poll elections, by the way. You could be like a brilliant at like reading statistics and such, but like the rhetoric that you come up with to behind that statistics could be shit because it could be full of bias. So I don't know. I don't know who David Shore is. I don't have a reason to trust him or not to trust him. I might look into him though. Sounds interesting. But I also believe that the lack of canvassing and traditional campaigning, unfamiliarity with, oh gosh, I can't pronounce that word, with remote digital campaigning and other irregularities also depressed Democratic turnout. Yes. Not only did it depress Democratic turnout, but it failed to get the message across to swing voters that they are not for what the Republicans are trying to make them out to be for. And then it's not just defund the police, it's taking over healthcare and shit like that. They are not for the mischaracterization of progressive policies that the Republicans are launching at them. Like that's an important part. Like what the Republicans are trying to attach to Democrats is not what the Democrats who use these slogans and like Medicare for all, Green New Deal, is not what these Democrats are for. Like a Republican will sit there and say stupid ass shit like they want to get rid of airplanes because they support the Green New Deal. But that's not what's in the Green New Deal. So the Democrats who are in these swing states that fail to win their elections, or people like Abigail Spanberger who almost lost their election, they just failed at getting a proper message across, while the Republicans were extremely good at getting a misinformation across. And that does have to do with the fact that they were not using new age technology to get their message across. They weren't using social media. That's one of the things about this whole defund the police thing. I do not like the rhetoric behind defund the police, but what are these centrists coming up with to convey that message in a similar fashion? Because the reason why things like defund the police spread, or make America great again, or build the wall, or lock her up, the reason why things like that are able to spread is because they're short, simple, to the point, and they have some kind of message behind them. Defund the police did not do a very good job at conveying the message that it actually has behind it, but you can't attack it if you don't have something else. Otherwise, you're just it's like the Republicans attacking Obamacare without having something to replace it. Well, defund the police is the placeholder for something better. Come up with something better. Otherwise, leave it alone. Try your best to clarify your position on the issue, instead of allowing the Republicans to define what defund the police means for you. You define it yourself. Otherwise, you're just attacking leftists. You're just attacking the left wing of your party. And you're not doing anything to help the issue. So I say a lot of the same things. I just repeated. He goes on, I would say almost all goes to the left. He's trying to blame all of it on the left. Like, that's crazy. It's almost impossible, if not entirely impossible, for down ballot candidates to differentiate themselves from the party they represent. Local news is almost eliminated outside of major cities, and there is usually just print stories about national news. There's little to no coverage of individual candidates, especially below Senate level. So this is like his reasoning why he thinks that it's impossible to differentiate yourself. I cannot pronounce that word either. From your party that they represent. And the coverage there is massively outweighed by the consistent messaging of standard news, which in this case tried to defund the police by twisting the words so hard they cease to have meaning. If you push the policies most established... Okay, so there's a contradiction here. So, here's the contradiction that he has. He's trying to say that the rhetoric behind defund the police is what costs these centrists their elections. But he's saying, and in addition to that, he is saying that a lot of where this messaging comes from is standard news, which in this case try to defund the police by twisting the words so hard they cease to have meaning, which to me says that he's trying to say that they try to give it this other meaning. Like the way AOC and Bernie Sanders and people like the Majority Report, David Pakman, they're trying to convey the message of let's reallocate funds from from the police department to other social services, which is a popular policy. People who vote against candidates because of defund the police are not voting against candidates because they want to reallocate funds to social services. They're voting against them because they think that defund the police means that you want to get rid of police. So if these standard news organizations are spreading this message, and that's where most people are getting their messaging from, then they're not voting against these candidates because of defund the police. If you push the policies, most establishments, especially sites like Vox, MSNBC, propose defund entails. Note that these are very different from an extreme protester who actually wanted to defund and abolish the policing. A lot of the protesters, including myself, who wanted to defund, who touted the phrase defund the police, did not mean abolish the police. And a lot of protesters who mean abolish the police actually says the words abolish the police. That is a slogan that was found in the Black Lives Matter protest. And you didn't have this weight of this terrible slogan, you'd at least come ahead. Those policies are incredibly popular. Defund isn't. Yes. But if the mainstream, if the establishment media, if the standard media, as you call them, was trying to twist the defund the police rhetoric from being defund the police to reallocate the police, which you admit are incredibly popular, and that's where most people get their messaging from, then defund the police did not have anything to do with why these people lost their elections. Okay. In your own logic. You can't logically hold, okay. Anyways. Okay. How can you say this when Trump lost the election but Republicans won down ballot? So yeah, I point out, how can you say that it's almost impossible, if not entirely impossible, for down ballot candidates to differentiate themselves from the party they represent? My example was Trump lost the election, but Republicans won down ballot. He says because Republican Party is popular relatively, but Trump isn't. But Trump is very popular within the Republican Party. So you would think that every single person, at least most people who voted down ballot Republican, would vote for Trump. He's got like an 80 to 90% approval rating within the Republican Party. But yeah, Trump has lots of media attention. Down ballot Republicans don't. He is in the exact opposite position. Very relatively easy for him to differentiate. I don't believe that the Republicans even tried to differentiate themselves from Trump, because within their party, Trump is incredibly popular. But they didn't have to try and differentiate themselves from Trump when it came to like swing voters, because the Democratic Party didn't even do a good job at trying to tie the two together. So, I mean, on one hand, like on one side, you got Republicans. You got Republican candidates tying moderate candidates who do not believe in defund the police. Some of them don't even believe in what the defund the police policies, what the meaning behind defund the police. You got those moderates being tied to this radical view that we need to get rid of policing. But on the other hand, you do not have these Republicans being tied to Trump in these swing states. And within the Republican Party, these people don't need to differentiate themselves from Trump because Trump is extremely popular. Matter of fact, I would go as far as to say they simped for them. And that just comes down to poor Democratic messaging yet again. It's on those candidates to do that, and they didn't. Okay. So, I say that, I don't say it in those kind of words because it's so much easier to bring my message out when I'm here talking than it is when I'm typing, because it's just so much. I can't tell if you're actually serious. So let me get just straight. The Republicans outperformed Trump because he was so synonymous with them within the Democratic Party. He is popular. Clearly, clearly it's a problem with Trump. Unless you think that magically every swing state candidate is fucking amazing, which is crazy talk. Every swing state candidate didn't have to be fucking amazing. Just the 7 or 8 that flipped the seats. And those swing seat candidates didn't have to be amazing at their messaging. They just had to be better than the Democrats, which is such a low bar to pass. Let's just put it that way. Who do you think are the most influential reps in the Democratic Party in terms of the minds of the average voter? If AOC isn't your top 3, you're out of your mind. And her wing of the party, or Bernie's wing if you prefer, were drooling over that shit. They were not drooling over the idea of getting rid of police, which is what the Republicans were trying to make out that the Democrats wanted to do. It was all over mainstream news, and it seeped its way into people's perceptions of the party because the Democrats failed to counter the perception the Democrats wanted to get rid of police. Of course, they need better messaging, but better messaging can only go so far when someone prominent in your party, like AOC or any of the other squad members, even Bernie Sanders, completely taint in the eyes of the average voter. What I wish AOC and Bernie Sanders did do was not fall for the rhetoric of defund the police and come up with something better. I would charge them with that, but I would charge Democrats who are in districts where you can't say defund the police and get away with it without massive explanation. I would charge them even more of responsibility to come up with something better. Because AOC wins whether she says defund the police and clarifies it, which she does, or not. She just wins her district. But those candidates who cannot win like that, they should be coming up with something better. More so than AOC and Bernie Sanders. It's more of their responsibility. If that's what they need to win, then it's more their responsibility. If you had a mini landscape where you could separate yourself somehow, maybe this wouldn't be such a problem. They could. They didn't need to separate themselves from the messaging of defund the police. They needed to separate themselves from what the Republicans were making defund the police out to be. You even said it yourself. The messaging, the policies that people want when they say defund the police is incredibly popular. But the amount of taking something insane like defund the police and making it into a sane policy proposal absolutely needs to fucking stop. So come up with something better than defund the police that activists and politicians alike can hold on to. Because remember, this wasn't activist messaging. This wasn't like AOC didn't come up with this. She latched onto it because she is a populist candidate. She's going to attach herself to what she feels like the people want. And if she can have something that would work for both candidates in swing districts and convey the message that the people are trying to convey when they say defund the police, I am sure she would attach herself to that. Party platforms are relatively meaningless. The RNC didn't have one. They lost. I mean, Trump lost. What matters is perception, and perception is formed in large part by national news media. The national news media, which you were saying, was trying to explain, what was the term? Sane wash, defund the police. If people believe the national media, and national media was saying, hey, defund the police isn't this, it's this, and this is popular, it's not A, it's B, but B is popular, then you would think that people would be on board, right? Imagine yourself as low information voter. Where do you get your news? Probably MSN coverage, pick up the cable, blah, 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 blah. And then they start talking about defunding the police. There's a decent chance you might believe they actually mean what they say and consider that this is a threat to people's safety. Unless the mainstream media that I'm watching is also saying defund the police doesn't mean that we're going to get rid of police. No amount of campaign ads the Democrats got. Anyways, so many contradictions there. So yeah, I think that this whole attacking the defund the police thing, it's just Democrats trying to find a reason to blame lefties for their loss, the left wing of their party for their loss. I mean, you saw it in 2016 when Hillary Clinton lost. They blamed everyone but Hillary Clinton, and even people in this community, the Destiny community, believes that Hillary Clinton was a uniquely bad candidate for running in 2016, especially, which is why she lost. And I don't know. I just the DNC, they will never admit that. They will never ever ever blame Hillary Clinton for her loss. The Democratic establishment will never ever do that. They're just trying to scapegoat the left for their lackluster performance down ballot. That's all that is.